It's time for Bring It In Troops, little Zoom from quarantine show. David Thorpe is here, and Brandon Grier's back. NBA agent Brandon Grier, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back.
No, thanks for being here. I think we should quick open by talking about the Dallas Mavericks stopped playing the national anthem at games, and it took us like a quarter of the season for anyone to notice. How about that?
I think that speaks to the genius of Mark Cuban. I think he understands, you don't have fans in right now. We're in a time where we talk about things for a second, it's a headline and then it goes away. And him being in Texas, red state where the anthem is a very controversial thing. If players decide to kneel or whatnot, like he's gonna eliminate it altogether where people are feeling some type of way very, momentarily, and then it passes.
So I'm just gonna roll. There's some backstory here, which is in July. Okay, so the first tweet there's from Mark Davis. He's a local right-wing talk show guy in Dallas. He says basically, if anybody kneels, he's out. So then Cuban, who, like for better or for worse, is always trying to cement the love of his players, right? Like I feel like a lot of what he does works this way. So he just says bye. And then U.S. Senator Ted Cruz jumps in, smelling opportunity, and says, really, the NBA is telling everyone who stands for the flag, who honors our cops and our veterans, to piss off in Texas, no less. Good luck with that. Okay, then Judy's going to walk us through. So then Mark Cuban says, have some balls for once, Ted Cruz. Speak to me. It's my tweet. Here we go. Now we're in fourth grade. Ted Cruz says, speaking of balls, tell us what you think about China. Oh, my gosh. Shots fired. So then then he doesn't answer, and Ted tries again. Still no answer from Cuban. Let's try simple, Mark. Tough guy. Can you say free Hong Kong? Can your players put that on their jerseys? Can you condemn the CCP's concentration camps with 1 million Uyghurs? Can you say anything other than Chairman Mao is beautiful and wise? Cuban says, I can say Black Lives Matter. I can say there's systemic racism in this country. I can say there's a pandemic that you have done little to end. I can say I care about this country first and last. Later, I can find the tweet. He tweeted, the national anthem, Mark Cuban tweeted, the national anthem police in this country are out of control. If you want to complain to your boss and ask why they don't play the national anthem every day before you start work. I don't know exactly why Mark Cuban doesn't have the anthem, but I feel like it's somehow to like he didn't want to have the kneeling thing, right? It feels like that was pretty clearly going to be a big Texas brouhaha, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like he knows his audience, and the thing that he can control is taking it away altogether.
Yeah. So then, the original radio guy, Mark Davis, I was like, let me see what he's doing. So I went to their website this morning, and sure enough, they're live talking about this issue right now, of course, and just in the last hour. So I was scribbling notes as Mark Davis was talking. Mark Davis's point is that we need the anthem for unity more than ever, which kind of makes my head explode. Then he says, Cuban's a good dude, a great owner, but man, is he confused on this. He says he's totally repelled by not having the anthem. He has complete disapproval. The lieutenant governor of Texas was about to join the show to talk about it. And he'd been emailing back and forth with Mark Cuban. And he reads the emails. Cuban said to him, he wanted to see if anyone noticed. He said it wasn't for disrespect, it was for the opposite. And then Cuban goes off about how Mavericks fans don't show up early, they don't stop what they're doing, they don't stand, they don't remove their hats. And then he says, interestingly, that the Mavs had no anthem for their first 16 years as an NBA team. And he says he doesn't know what the team's plans are moving forward, but says that he won't be bullied. And then actually, just the only thing I'd add is that the NBA said basically they'll permit it in this unusual year, but sounds like they intend to have the anthem moving forward. All things struck me as people who look like they can profit from a fight, starting fights with each other, I guess, that was kind of my take.
It's a made up hooey.
I mean, it struck me as like, oh, here's a third rail issue, which like all parties can profit from, right? Like Mark wants to look like he's on the proper side of a political issue. This guy Mark Davis wants radio listeners. Ted Cruz is pretty transparent what he wants, which is a little different from people really truly believing in something and living it every day.
Right, and they have a chance state their belief. Like both of them have a pulpit that they can be bullies on for their platform if they want to.
Yeah.
It just think about this on this show, a few months ago, maybe we talked about the guy in Germany when everyone was doing the Heil Hitler stance and he didn't. And there was a backstory as to why he wasn't going to do it. Anyone who watched the 13 minutes or even half of the video that they showed yesterday during the impeachment of this incredibly violent mob attacking police officers, mostly police officers. They didn't really beat anybody else. They didn't beat up each other. They beat up police officers, right? I have a hard time. All of them want to stand for the flag. Like it's almost fair to say if any group is going to be monolithically voting or rooting for something, they would choose to stand for the flag, and yet they will beat police officers standing in their way. This is a moot subject now. Like if you want to be on that side, that's fine. But the rest of us see very clearly if anyone serving in Germany then could have a redo, those that were thinking properly would choose the redo, obviously. That's what we're saying is we're pressing the reset button on this. You've lost your credibility if you're siding on that side.
Do you, Brandon, Lamar Odom's book is right over here, and he has this moment of like he almost wanted to beat up Mark Cuban. Do players like playing for Mark Cuban in your experience?
The players that I've talked to who've played for Mark Cuban, they like, being able to talk to him, know where you stand and how he provides, all of the amenities and things for his players.
Right.
And then I think when you see the loyalty he's had to like a Nowitzki, JJ Barea, those are the things that players want from their owner.
Listen, I have a relationship with Mark. He's not a perfect human being, but I did a deal with him one time where I was going to have a player sign with him instead of another team. A very, very, very bright young man who Mark and his sports psychologist told me he had the highest IQ of anyone they ever tested. And the kid's a brilliant guy, and his dad's well-off, self-made man. This guy's from Europe. And I said, Mark, I need you to promise me you'll sit on the plane with you at least 3 times on road trips that you're on. It's one-on-one, just sitting down, pick his brain, vice versa. And I never followed up on it. I just trusted it would happen. After the young man ended up going overseas a few years later, he said he thought he sat with him at least 7 times, just the two of them talking. Right. So that's good. I'm not trying to make any kind of Pollyanna here. I'm too friendly with you, Henry, to not respect the other side of this. And I think your insight and your spidey sense as to why pick this fight is dead on. This is
I'm biased.
No
here,
risk.
Right? He banned bloggers from the locker room when I was brand new at ESPN, and my boss made me fly down there and try to break the ban, right? Which meant I emailed back with Mark. What's that?
I don't remember you going down there.
Oh my God, it was just a dumb episode. Like the whole thing.
I remember the whole thing. I don't remember you going down there.
It was just embarrassing. It was like a misunderstanding. But I end up spending way too much time learning about how the Mavericks operate and what's going on, all this stuff. But in the end, what really happened behind the scenes, and we could talk about it for hours if you wanted, but I'll spare you, is there was one blogger who covered the Mavericks at that time, and only one, whose name is Tim McMahon. You may know him. Then he was unknown, but and Tim McMahon had pissed off Jerry Stackhouse. Mark Cuban thought anyway. Like Jerry, it was like a guess at how Mark Cuban could impress Jerry Stackhouse. And so he's like, "You're out of here." And then my stupid boss was like, "Go make it a big issue." And it's like, no one cares about bloggers here. Nobody, like, I end up on the phone with Jerry Stackhouse. He was like, "I could care less about a pimple on my ass than some blogger." And I'm like, what is this whole thing about? Like, nobody cares. Anyway. And actually, one of my favorite things was, I'm writing about the whole thing because it's my job. Like, and then later that night, my phone rings, and it was Aaron Goodwin. Brandon, you know Aaron Goodwin?
Yes.
And Aaron Goodwin's like, "Did you get in the locker room?" And I'm like, no, they wouldn't let me in. He's like, "I would have been there with the entire Nation of Islam."
That's funny.
But anyway. I mean, that was Cuban trying to make his players feel like they had his back.
This feels like the same thing to me. Like, I don't dislike it, but like, Cuban's desperate to be seen as a political figure with a certain stature, right? He toured with Hillary Clinton during the crucial last month of her campaign when she lost. like she was his go-to and it didn't work. Anyway, I think he wants to be loved. It's not a bad impulse.
Right.
All right. I feel like we should also talk about really interesting All-Star weekend. That it will exist at all this year has become something of a surprise. And you don't usually see, oh wait, we should see what Devin shared here though. Hold on.
About the national anthem. I clicked, it didn't work on it.
Okay, sources close to Mark Cuban says decision to not play anthem for Mavs games isn't because they don't love US, but because many feel anthem doesn't represent them and they want to continue discussion of how to represent people from all communities when honoring US at game. Did I do anything for you?
No. All right, let's go back to the All-Star game.
Okay, so in a rarity, LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo, James Harden, all sorts of, very powerful players saying they would rather not go to the All-Star game. Here we go. Jay's got the link up. And Sam Amick published in The Athletic today a lot of important stuff. Basically, why would Adam Silver do this? And the answer is $30 million.
But don't you think it actually, this does coincide with your comments on Cuban? Adam Silver had a chance here to sit down with, it's not hard to figure out the game's best players. We know who they are, right? Sit down with them. Do a Zoom call. No, do a Zoom call with them. You can't sit down with them. Do a Zoom call with them. Guys, what do you want to do? There's $30 million on the table. How do we proceed? Why wouldn't you? They did the same thing with the basketball years ago, and we know what happened, right? They never asked Steve Nash, MVP, hey, what do you think of this new ball? Or what do you think of any new ball? Just the players should be involved when it's their health on the line and their family's health. That seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it?
I think it's a no-brainer. I also think that a long time ago, the NFL decided we're going to just play through cases and things like that. The NBA spent a bunch of money to go in the bubble and try to be as safe as possible, and it worked. And they see other, leagues just playing through the whistle. We know what's going to happen, and this is what we've decided to do. We're full force ahead with that. And at this point, it's all about money. So the NBA is trying to minimize, the losses as much as they can. And I feel like they're looking at it like we're playing games. The All-Star game is another game. Like, we're going to play that. It's going to help the bottom line. And, the players don't want to do it. The players aren't happy with having to come to the arena, or the facility twice a day right now for testing. And, some organizations, they tried to implement coming back a third time. And some of the stars were just like, no, we're not doing it. So I think it's about money. We know what's, pushing the decisions.
And they're this will cost, the NBA's bad revenue year will cost players too, right? Because they revenue share. Do we know how that's going?
In terms of how much the losses are right now?
Yeah.
I don't think that we know. I think the players and agents know on their side,
Right.
The worst it's going to be is 18% reduction over the next 3 years.
Right.
And if it gets better, then, it'll be less than that.
And I can't decide, is that worse if you make $500,000 or $50 million?
Oh, yeah, you can.
No, but it's tricky. No, but you're below, if you play in the NBA for 4 years and make minimum wage, you're basically over your lifetime below a minimum wage worker, right? You're not wealthy. And so 18% off that is a real problem for how you're going to have health insurance when you're old, right? 18% off your 50 million is so what? You're going to do everything you want to do with your life. Period. You're going to have every house you want to have. You know what I mean?
That's
Doesn't
my
affect
point.
you in any way.
Yeah, that's my point. I completely agree. Yeah. No, it's doing the damage to Brandon knows. These guys, I just talked to a player about it, very, very recently, more or less a minimum level guy who used those exact terms. Like, it doesn't matter to these other stars. It matters to us.
Right.
We don't have 3 homes.
Right.
A lot of them don't have 1 home. They have a condo wherever they're playing, or they're renting, which is even smarter. But there's no permanence to
Right.
it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I understand and hear from the players and know, their beefs. They would much rather take 5 days and go to the Bahamas or wherever. They're not going to just stay at home during that break. So when you talk about the health risk and it's more risk, come on. I know, what the real beef is that this has been a taxing year and they don't want to go perform when they could have had a break.
I think that's exactly right, Brandon. I've said this maybe one other time. My son was very honest with us recently about how it's stressful as hell to not catch this virus and potentially end the team's season, right? Or at least they've had 2 different breaks. And I'm not sure they've even had a positive test, but the NCAA is being super careful. The NBA is similar. These guys are stressed. Forget about performing. The stress many of us feel about not getting sick are because we don't want to get sick and potentially really get sick and even die. Most of these athletes that I've talked to anyway are far more concerned just about letting their team down,
right,
or potentially having to shut people down because of contact tracing. They're less worried about their own health, but it's still enormous stress because they're thoughtful. Those that aren't feeling stressed at all aren't very thoughtful people. The ones that are, most of these guys are thoughtful. It is a team game. So I think Brandon's exactly right. It's not just about going to party in the Bahamas. It's just not having to worry about anything for a period of time and recharge your batteries. It's a valuable thing for their mental health.
Well, in the article, it says that, because of the risk of the virus and the new variants, the players who go to All-Star Game will go for one night and they'll spend 100% of their time by rule, either in the hotel or at the arena and nowhere else.
Yeah.
And so you think, oh, well, that's understandable, I guess. It's not at all fun or different from a regular day for an NBA player, right? But there's no novelty to that whatsoever. However, it also says there'll be fans in the stands. So then you're like, well, what the fuck with the safety?
Oh, they are bringing fans in?
The Hawks already have fans, as we know, because some of them take their masks off to yell at LeBron.
Right.
Why couldn't they just we've already changed so many things over this year. Why not do a 1-year Pro Bowl type All-Star game if indeed the metrics suggest that it's safer to do it? Most guys are vaccinated, whatever. And the only ones that'll be missing will be, LeBron and AD and Giannis. I mean, there'll be some guys missing, but you can almost do it, right after the finals or even, I mean, that's probably the best time to do it. If you feel like you have to do it at some point.
My take is that they're trying to keep the traditions going as much as possible. Like, we have a mid-season All-Star game. Like, we changed that this year. Like, then players are gonna be like, why don't we do this every year and just have a break in the middle of the season?
That's a great point. Yeah.
And they have a problem. Like, the TV viewing habits of the world are kind of set. And there aren't that many moments for basketball, right? And like one of them is like whatever. It's always a week or two after it's usually 2 weeks after the Super Bowl, I think.
It's mid-February, right on my birthday every year,
at the little spot they have, right? And they don't have a spot in July because it's going to be the Olympics this year, right? Maybe.
That's why.
So I think it's just like they have to hold their spot, right? If someone's going to take their spot, it's going to be some brand new horse race or something, right? Like,
but the process has to be talked to. These are intelligent, thoughtful human beings who are marvelous basketball players. To not include them on this should be a process that ends.
But that's the whole reason you want to be a billionaire, right? Is so you can Never listen to anyone on anything. Just do whatever the hell you want, right? Like, this is where I bring up Cuban again. I'll never forget. I was in the ESPN gym. I've told this story on the show before, but like at the time of, I think, the Ray Rice incident, like people were saying that NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell did a terrible job, and Cuban was the guest on Mike and Mike, 7 a.m, and I'm like, getting out of the shower in the ESPN gym in Bristol, and he said, as I recall, that he thought Roger Goodell was doing a perfect job because nobody was blaming the owners. And that was the only bar. Like, you're a perfect commissioner if the owners can do whatever the hell they decide to do. And that's the job. In his view, that was the job of the league. It was just to like keep the owners free to do whatever they want to do. And I'm like, oh wow, that's cynical and weird. But and not good for the league. But this is what it feels like here. It's like, no, they don't want to sit down. They don't want to take LeBron's advice on this, right? Like, down to 30 million, shut up, LeBron.
I mean, owners are already mad that LeBron has the sway and the power that he has, and essentially has brought a whole generation of stars behind him now. And to me, when you talk about like the NFL, like we're seeing quarterbacks are now borrowing the playbook from the NBA and stars, and now they're going to start, using their power and leverage the way they see LeBron and stars from the NBA have done it over the past 5 to 10 years.
In what way, Brandon? I don't really watch much football. And like recruiting players like Brady did?
No, forcing their hand. So Deshaun Watson is going to be trying to force his way out of, Houston because the owners acted like they were going to let him have some say on the personnel decisions, then reneged, fired the equipment manager, which he loved. Just personal beefs that you can have as the quarterback because ultimately, like everything revolves around you. And Russell Wilson came out this week and he was on the interview and, he had a beef with the Seahawks, not including him in personnel decisions. So you'll see quarterbacks they're going to follow the blueprint of NBA superstars.
Yeah, that's because power isn't money exactly, right? Like, like getting to decide who goes where, who works where. Like, this is really, I mean, probably all of us have played some version of fantasy sports at some time in our lives, right? The fantasy part isn't doing all the hard work to get 6-pack abs. Like, the fantasy part is concocting the team, right? That's the fun part.
Yeah. And you see, a Giannis say, like, LeBron's a pretty smart guy. Like, we're going to back him because they know, like, LeBron has the juice and the sway to be able to get things done for the players. And we're following his lead and, using that influence.
When he said there's no room for Donald Sterling in this league, in our league, I think he said, I don't know, a lot of people took it as like, oh, that was the point of no return, right? For Adam Silver kicking out Donald Sterling. I don't know, how'd you take that?
I mean, yeah, it's like, as a league, are you going to side with racism when your players and, the talent in the league is represented in large numbers by, majority African-American players? Like, you can't be on that side of history. And he pretty much put the onus on them to end this, and they did.
Yeah.
It's interesting on LeBron too. We've had some discussions, Brandon, on Bring It In regarding the hate some of these veteran retired stars like Barkley and Shaq have for other really good players like Donovan Mitchell and Christian Wood on their show. LeBron, who is playing against these guys right now, and you could almost understand some antipathy for some of his competitors, is just super supportive of them. He's like a Twitter policeman too. He has his guys back. Now, you can argue what his motivations are. Maybe it is for selfish reasons because he wants them to fall in line. It doesn't really matter. The point is he's got their back. And that means a lot to players.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's grown as a leader to where he understands in order to get guys to follow him, like, they got to believe in you and know that you're going to go to bat for them.
Is it weird that you're kind of a competitor with LeBron as an agent?
It is what it is.
It's a complicated world. It's tough, Brandon.
Is there anyone like that in football?
With the sway of LeBron?
No, in terms of agency.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so.
Didn't Pat Bev, is he the one that in that big meeting when LeBron said we're done, didn't Pat Bev say, hey, you heard the man, let's go, something like that?
Well, yeah, I think he said if LeBron's done, there is no, there is no playoffs. Like
Yeah.
they understand that, right now LeBron is the face of the league, and he has driven and risen all the boats.
For sure.
Do players feel safe going to work, like vis-a-vis COVID? Like, is it?
Yeah, I think that, all of the multiple tests, guys getting to the gym, having to sit in their cars for the rapid test, then come in, after 30 minutes to an hour in their car and then get another test. Like, I think, they're trusting that, with all this testing, yeah, there will be some cases, but I mean, we're doing a pretty good job trying to keep them safe. The thing that I think that I hear from the players is just like how mentally taxing it is.
Yeah.
Even on your off day, having to come to the facility. I've had players in Detroit and like, I don't see them. And they're 15 minutes away in the city for 2 days because, they don't want them, meeting people and having people to the hotels and things like that. And, the guys just, they aren't finding an outlet away from basketball. Usually you get to go, have dinners every night in the different cities and, visit your different friends and family around the country. And like, they're just traveling and being holed up in a hotel.
Everything, the whole world's a Marriott now. Like it feels like, yeah. Everything is
Well, for them, it's a 4 seasons, but yeah, I understand your point.
Well, no, well, I mean, what I mean by that though is like it's sterile, right? There's not people that you are hugging when you get there. There's not like your favorite little haunt. Like it's just like all the same. Wait, did you say that they sit in their car for an hour every day in the parking lot?
While they're waiting to get tested, or not the result, but they're waiting to get tested. They do. I don't know about an hour. I'm sure sometimes it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah, because you sit in your car, you pull in, you get the test. You have to wait for the rapid results, and then you can come in.
They should call that a fairly rapid result.
Right.
There's no, one of the things about basketball is there's a lot of joy. There should be a lot of joy when you're playing, but that's when you're playing, when you play pickup. When you're playing professionally, joy comes and goes. It's a roller coaster because when you get your ass beat, there's no joy in that. But the whole experience of being an NBA player has much more joyful moments off the court, and those are gone. So I think we actually seen on the court, we've talked about this before, Henry, the celebrations are better now than ever on the court. That's the only time they get to do it.
The only fun
That's
thing.
They don't have much else.
Yeah. Brandon, how do you as an agent, how do you know the COVID rules? Like, did you get some email with these are all the rules now, or do you?
At the beginning of the season, we got a memo from the NBPA, but things have kind of been evolving throughout the year. I don't really feel like they've done a good job updating us as things evolve. We kind of hear it from the players when they're griping about something else they have to do just to keep the season going and playing.
How different, Brandon? So go back. Well, we can go back a year still. So think of what your typical week was 1 year ago as an agent in terms of your travel, right? And just your daily experience of going to games. I realize right now you're doing nothing. So a year ago, what would be a typical week and a typical day looking like for you?
Well, usually beginning of the days, you're doing a lot of your calls, whether if you had multiple guys playing the night before and you weren't able to watch all the games, I'm, catching up on Synergy, seeing all their minutes, and then having talks with the guys. And, going to 1 or 2 college games a week. And then, you go to see your guys at least once every 2 weeks, around the country in different places. And, you try to pick out like strategically where you're going and things like that. But Now it's just you're talking on the phone with the guys, you're watching games, and of course, you're not really going to college games at all, and you're not going to the NBA games, so you lose a lot of the being able to be in the know and touch the front office and personnel guys, and then the camaraderie with your clients.
When we're out of the pandemic, do you think it's 100% back to how it used to be, or is there like a hybrid future?
For which part?
Well, I guess so. Like, I mean, like some businesses are finding that Zoom does work okay for some of the tasks they would use, and they don't have to fly quite so much. Like, is your business like that, or do you think you still want to go be in the hallway?
It's a people business on our
Yes.
side, so I don't think Zoom will work. Like you got to get out and touch and see people.
Well, yeah, you're. I know your business very well, Brandon. You're not just going to see your guys. You're going to see to make sure no one else is going to see your guys.
That's a big part of it. And then you also, like, in order to grow your business, you have to be on the scene and be known, and for people to see you in order to possibly pick up other business.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's going to be. I don't know when that's going to happen. Hopefully in the 2021-22 season.
I hope so.
Wait, and you don't have to answer this, you don't have to, but how much do you spend in a usual year in restaurants?
How much money?
Oh, how much money?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a hefty amount.
That's like a big, I mean, restaurants are, I was having this conversation with my sister, like restaurants solve so many problems in life. Like no, restaurants is a big difference.
And you didn't appreciate, how like much joy you got out of going to a restaurant and just being in a good atmosphere until like you couldn't do it.
I mean, I assume that's where you would hang out with your players if you go fly somewhere to see them, right? You go after a game to a restaurant. Yeah.
Yeah, we go to dinner at time.
Yeah. That'll be fun. I miss restaurants.
I can't even. I'm so worried about this variant that for Valentine's Day and then my birthday 2 days later, I told my wife, I'm sorry, but we can maybe go eat somewhere on the beach as long as no one else is around. But I feel safer. We're so close to getting vaccinated now. We're in our 50s. It shouldn't be too long. I mean, maybe a few months, but I don't want to take any chances. And so now even eating outdoors, where I did it probably 4 or 5 times since March, I'm hesitant now because I just feel like, who knows, with that variant, I'm worried about it.
I hope it's not a couple months. I think hopefully it's faster than a couple months for you guys being able to get a vaccination.
I do too. We're going to start driving around Publixes and late at night and seeing if they'll just put a needle in our arm because they're doing it twice a week. We're doing it, I think, tonight, actually. Yeah. Because they're doing it twice a week.
Sounds like that's a fun new hobby for you guys.
Yeah, that's a date. It's like a mystery date. Like, hey, maybe we'll get vaccinated tonight.
It's like
I haven't been to one restaurant, but yesterday this laptop had a problem, so I had to go to the Apple store, and which means I went into the mall, which is where our Apple store is. I haven't been in a mall, so I put my mask on, go in the mall, and as soon as you enter the mall, there's a giant Mexican restaurant, which is open air connected to the walkway, and there's just like a family of 10 just seated right there, like right where you walk by, just eating dinner and or lunch, I guess. And I haven't. It was weird. It was a little traumatizing. I was like, "Whoa! I have not been around that. Like that feels crazy."
Oh, I have. In Florida, we have a bunch of that.
I guess we do too. I just haven't been in the mall to see it.
Right. Yeah. I haven't been in the mall either. I know my wife went once to shop with my daughter, but for 2 minutes in a mask. But yeah, people are whatever.
Florida, Georgia, and Texas, they're just powering through. Like it doesn't exist.
Yeah. All right, Brandon. So you have some clients cranking up in Florida near where David is. Actually, was the G League's bubble is coming on board.
Starting right now. I think there's games on right now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about that?
I mean, I'm happy that they were able to find a way to, have a G League season because, these guys are in such a small window for their career to be able to chase making it to the NBA. And I think that during a season where there's so much turnover, like there's going to be big opportunity for guys to realize their dream of making it to the NBA and then get an opportunity to play. which is the second part of luck that you usually need to happen. So I think it's a huge opportunity for those guys this year.
I feel like you're a very reasonable, measured person, but there's got to be like a sales part of you which wants to hype up your clients a little bit. Like, let it rip, go for it.
Well, I think I have some of the top guys in the G League. So you'll see, a Naz Mitrou-Long who's been on two-way, things like that. He's going to get signed by NBA team. Jared Udoh, who is like arguably, he was first team all G League last year. I think he's the most NBA ready guy in the G League. I got a young guy in Robert Franks who's a 40% three-point shooter at 6'8", stretch 4. And then, Antonius Cleveland, he was on the two-way with the Mavs last year. So, like, for me, I got quite a few guys who I think will take advantage of this. And as rosters are turning over and they're having needs, like, my guys will be at the top of the list.
Brandon's Henry, someone that I've talked to about how close the top talent in the G League and the lower to middle level talent who are playing in rotations in the NBA, they're interchangeable. Some guys just got the break or a couple breaks or 3 or 4 breaks and they made it. And the guys in the G League who are the best players there, like you mentioned, Udoh and Naz, those guys haven't had the break or even bad luck. And yet they're every bit as good as a bunch of these guys playing. Don't you think, Brandon?
Well, yeah, like there's 2 parts to the break. Like you have to get there, and being on a roster is like the first part of it. Then you need another opportunity created to where you get to play meaningful minutes and show that team and the rest of the league like you're a legit NBA player. And, for us, like I've been through it multiple times, but we had Dewayne Dedmon back in the day with the Sam Hinkie Sixers, and he called us to ask if we were okay with doing one of his type of deals before he gave us the 10-day. And we said, sure, we're open to discussing it. But for us, we were excited about him getting to play on the Sixers because we knew he was going to play night in and night out. And he used the 2 10-days to show that he was a legit NBA player. And we declined signing the 4-year deal with 3 years non-guaranteed because we knew, like, we used this opportunity to show that you're a legit NBA player, and now we're not going to lock ourselves into that deal. And that's like the second part that a lot of these guys who are trying to make it, they haven't had a chance to play night in and night out and show that they're an NBA player.
It's well, David and I were talking about the Nets had an opening and signed Iman Shumpert, and it seems like this is the 100th time, the 200th time that this kind of thing happens where here's the opening for I don't know who you would recommend, but David has me convinced that there are 25 players outside the NBA who could help immediately, and youth is a big value in basketball, right? Being able to run fast and jump high, and not being anyway. But and then well, I don't know, David, do you want to talk about your views?
Yeah. So Shumpert's hurt. Hey, what a surprise! The old guy who probably has been training super hard is hurt. When these young cats are working their ass off all the time in gyms all over the country, not even including the G League guys. There's guys in the G League who've been training now for 2 weeks after the quarantine. And I haven't talked to you about this, Brent, I don't think, but Tom Habstroh talked about if you've had COVID, there's an advantage for you to come to a team. But also, if you're in that G League protocol, you only have to do a 2-day quarantine if an NBA team picks you up. And if you're not in that, you have a longer quarantine. These guys are in shape and have been playing 5-on-5 and only have to sit 2 days. And yet you sign them on Shumpert?
Wait,
come on.
The whole G League only has to sit 2 days?
Any player in that bubble, if they get moved up, only has a 2-day.
Now they have the bubble. That's the deal?
Yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Well, that's huge.
It's huge. So, I mean, this thing was, you had a ton of teams opt out of the G League bubble. So at a certain point, like it was on the ropes, but I mean, I'm ecstatic that they've been able to pull it off. And, we know that it's a safe space based off of the results from the NBA.
And the talent is really, really high. I've been lucky enough to I've already watched 3 scrimmages in the G League. These are not public, but coaches have sent me, to be able to watch the film, whatever. and the talent's extraordinary. I mean, the problem with the G League's always been it's the second most talented league in the world in terms of pure prospect talent, but way down the list in terms of actual basketball playing because they're just young guys for the most part. Right. But now you've got people like Naz and Udoh, 27-year-old men who have played in the NBA and really have dominated the G League and really know how to play. And there's a lot more guys like that. So now you've got a legit league and there's only 18 teams too. So this G League Ignite team, we'll see how that goes. Super talented. In fact, I want Brandon to talk about, they've got 2 of the likely top 5 picks in the draft this summer on that Ignite team. So high talent, but I think low-level basketball experience because they're all right out of high school, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, these kids were playing high school basketball last year, and I think it's a smart idea from the owner's side to incentivize guys to come play in the G League where they get all this intel on them. You know, they pay them more money than they would get other places or college for sure. But then they also tried to surround them with like Amir Johnson and guys like that who could teach them the NBA ways and like how a veteran operates. And I mean, I think that's a good part of what it takes to become a pro.
Have they been together like as a team for a while already?
They've been together for I think since like October.
Yeah, way too long.
Yeah,
it's been months. What do you think of those top 2 guys?
I think that, like, you know, people talk about quality of drafts. Like, to me, this draft has a chance to be really special. Like, I mean, Jalen Green is a super talent, you know, from an athletic standpoint, some of his skills. Everybody's looking for elite wings with, you know, Kawhi type size and things like that. Jonathan Kuminga has a chance to develop into one of those type of players just because of his physical tools and athleticism. So when you talk about like those 2 kids being some of the first guys to go through this program, like, you know, those are studs. And then, you know, you have a Cade Cunningham who's not in that at
Oklahoma State. He's the one at Oklahoma State.
Yeah, he went to college. Like, to me, I mean, he's a game-changing, franchise-changing talent.
Do we know how NBA teams view this? Like, is it appealing if you're coming from the G League Ignite team into the draft, or would they rather have seen you at?
NBA teams want as much info as possible to educate their decisions. So this is why the owners are pushing for a G League team like this, because for them to spend $900,000 to get all of the intel and access to who you are as a person, you know, saves them from, hopefully in their eyes, it saves them from the Anthony Bennett, you know, $40 million mistakes and things like that.
So what is the intel? Like, are these poor players wearing like Apple Watches and it all gets uploaded to like Mark Cuban's computers?
Well, I hope not. As an agent, we frown on too much science and things like that, because we're trying to protect the players from exposing things that you knock them off the boards with. Right. And the owners want as much info as possible, medically, you know, scientifically, to make sure that they don't, you know, waste a $50 million contract on a top 3 pick. So, and, you know, like you said, they've been working out in Walnut Creek for months now. So these coaches who want to get back in the NBA, like, they're going to spill the beans. You know, they get to work with these guys every day. Like, a player can hide some things in the draft process when you come in for a day, but when you're working with these coaches day in and day out for a year or months, like, you're going to see who that player really is character-wise.
But how does that information get to the 30 teams from, you know what I mean?
Oh, they're calling the coaches, just like they would for a college. Like, there's no college coach that is on the phone with NBA executives and scouts all the time. I mean, college coach that has NBA prospects. That's a very normal, and they stay in touch throughout the course of their player's career, especially when they're rookies. I think Brandon's point is very insightful. The college coaches typically say, great kid, hard worker. They want their player to get drafted high so they can recruit the next guy, right?
Right.
I hadn't thought about that. Who's coaching the team? Was Brian Shaw?
Brian Shaw, and I thought at some point they were saying Sam Mitchell was going to have.
Sam oversees it all, which
okay,
makes my head explode for that whole. That's a whole other thing.
Typically, college coach Calipari needs his guys to get drafted as high as possible so he can go sell it to the next batch of one and dones. Well, the G League Ignite coaches, they're trying to get back into the NBA. So they understand we work for the NBA. We're put here to help give intel on these guys and, the decisions that the teams are making.
Right. How much does he like basketball? Is he showing up early? Is he staying late? Is he someone you can really trust, especially in these days of COVID? What are eating habits like? You can't talk about nighttime things because no one's going anywhere at night. So
right.
that part's easy.
There is no night. They canceled night.
Right, yeah. right. Sunset, that's it. How well does he learn?
Wait, really? So I made my little spying joke about the Apple Watch, but you're still subjected to all the same relationship stuff, right? So let's say I don't want to implicate Brian Shaw here, but let's say mythical other coach wants to get back to the NBA. He's going to get one job, not 30 jobs, right? Isn't he going to call his friends and say ooh, don't draft that guy, and not tell 30 teams that, right? You know what I mean?
I think he's going to tell them I think he's going to tell them the truth to everyone. I think more so than the college guy. This is just my guess.
Yeah.
I think Brandon agrees that he's going to, but I don't think he's going to say it about the two main guys.
No, I guess the point is if you're trying to avoid it, if you're an NBA team, I'll shut up after this, I promise. If you're an NBA team, you're trying to avoid Anthony Bennett, right? There's some dirt, right? And the idea is you're gonna know it more from this environment than from the previous system. So I'm if someone tells you, right? But only if someone tells you, which they're gonna tell you, if it suits them, I guess, which it might suit them, it might not, right?
Well, that's the thing. The college coaches don't have the same motivation to expose the, flaws of their players.
Right.
These guys, they're NBA coaches. They're trying to get back to the private jets, the 5-star hotels, the big payday.
It's about the private jet.
So they know where their bread is buttered.
Yeah.
How do you think? I haven't looked to see the score today. Do you think the Ignite team can compete? Because my gut tells me they won't be able to compete with these teams.
Well, they have some, Amir Johnsons and 4 or 5.
Oh, they're playing. Got it.
Yes, that are on the team.
That helps a lot.
And I think that is why they'll be able to compete.
That's it, 100%. Yeah. It's if you put 4 or 3 pros around a stud high school kid, the stud high school kid will look way, way better than if you put him with 4 other high school kids who may be amazing. They're still going to struggle. Yeah, for sure. Do we lose Brandon? Are you there, Brandon? Oh.
He's having a Wi-Fi moment, I think.
Perfect.
Well, he's gone, David. Anyway. Have you seen Brandon's nephew play?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so while he's gone, why don't you tell us? There he is. Brandon's back.
Oh, I told Brandon what I thought of Harlan. He is. Oh, you'll love this, Henry.
Okay.
Brandon knows this. I didn't know who the kid was until I watched him play against Florida State. Well, I'd never seen him really play except for on film a little bit. He plays like Harlan Beverly from University of Miami. He plays like your guy from Portland. He's got that kind of game. Anthony Simon.
Oh.
Like the most electric athlete, but smooth. You don't realize he's got it all of a sudden. And he didn't have any dunks. In fact, he did not play well in the game I saw. He's not been playing well lately. He plays a good amount. He starts. He's one of their main players. Their team has been racked with injuries. Harlan would probably have a much better year if they were healthy. They were a top 10 team, people thought, if everyone's healthy. He doesn't have the game yet, in my opinion, to carry a team or doesn't have the confidence for that. But when I watched him, and again, I don't think he scored, but his athleticism exploded off the page in terms of quickness and energy. He's young. He's a 19, 20-year-old kid, but he's very talented. He played at Montverde with like these
Cade
great players that are
Cunningham,
going to be in
yeah.
the draft, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he was at Montverde with Cade Cunningham, Moses Moody, who's projected to be a top 20 pick, and then Precious Achua, who is on the Miami Heat, was his roommate.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he's a young kid who, I mean, their team has been decimated by injuries, and he's actually been playing through an injury all year, which has really affected him. But they only had like 7 guys available. So he's just been trying to be there for his team. But he's a shell of himself right now. But, he's a young kid that has to figure out how to play the game in terms of thinking the game, not just hooping, which is, a lot of 19-year-olds have to figure it out.
I'm not wrong in my description of him like being like Anthony, am I?
Yeah, like he can, he's a 44-inch vertical kid, 6'5", can play multiple guard positions. He's got talent.
Can he shoot?
I think that's an area of growth for him, shooting.
Brandon's great too. This is for anyone that ever listens or watches and you have a chance to mentor young athletes, whether they're family or not. Brandon's this way with his clients too. He builds a relationship with them outside of basketball. Obviously, it's his nephew. It's most important that he does that. But he does not kiss ass. Brandon is not some kind of soft, tell them what they want to hear kind of thing. He's pretty bold. And as in my opinion, the players need that.
Laughing. Brandon's just laughing.
He knows I'm right.
Sometimes it may be to my detriment, but I can't lie to the guys because eventually it's gonna rear its head where, oh, well, why did this happen or that? It's like, dude, this is why.
Right. I've been telling you all the time.
Yeah, we've been talking about this. You have to work on this. You got to get better at this.
Wait, can you tell us, is there a story you can share along those lines from any time in your career?
About telling guys the truth?
We're fans of that on this show.
Man, it happens so much. I don't know, like what would really stand out.
Tell them like what you've been working on with Naz. You've had Naz for a bit.
Yeah. I mean, Naz is a kid who, coming out of college, he played on a team at Iowa State with Matt Thomas, who's with the Raptors, Monte Morris, Georges Niang, Abdul Nader, Deontay Burton was with the Thunder. I think there was one other kid. All these guys have touched the NBA.
At Iowa State. NBA.
Yeah. And they were all on one team. But because of that, like Monte Morris, like 3-4 to 1 assist to turnover ratio, like he played point guard all the time. Naz was just a shooter. But in the NBA, he's had to grow to being an on-the-ball guard, which means you got to make the decisions. You have to, as a second or third string point guard, like coach got to trust you to be able to run his team. So that's been part of his growth is like, you have to make, 40, 50 decisions in a game. You can't make 8 bad ones where you flip the ball or things like that. So, we have to go through and discuss, why'd you make this decision? I don't know is not a good answer. You have to be able to have some rhyme and reason to it. And it's millions of dollars on the line. So for me to help guys, which has kind of been one of my niches, is helping guys not being out of the league, find a way to claw their way in and then carve out a career. Like, I mean, it's big money on the line. So usually it's a long process that takes hours and hours of, critiquing and correcting with the guys. They got to trust you to be able to have those conversations and got to know it comes from a place of love.
Players love to say, coaches let me play my game. And Brandon will not let them say that. Right?
Yeah, no. And especially like, you got to think coming into the NBA, like you're a 12 to 15 man on the roster. Like you're going to have a very limited role and opportunity to begin with. So you don't get the luxury of how you were the man in high school or college or different things like that. Like you got to be ready to make it happen in the 2 minutes you get. And that's what, people don't understand. It makes it so tough to make it in this league.
Yeah.
I'm increasingly obsessed with just like players who can read this floor really quickly, right?
The Kyle Lowry syndrome.
Kyle Lowry totally like, why is he so good, right? Like he doesn't check the normal boxes, right? But I'm increasingly convinced that he just like he reads the whole floor multiple times a second all game long on both ends of the floor, and that just gives there was one play that I just got obsessed with where it was like 1.4 seconds left, something like this, and ball's coming down. His teammate gets it in a crowd, and actually what later happened was landed with it and got stripped. But while he's landing with it, before Kyle Lowry hits the floor, he found the referee's eyes and called 3 timeouts.
Yeah.
Raptors ball. And like he's just doing this all the time. And I just think we underrate as fans that now, the way the game's being played now is at such a high level in your brain.
Oh, I tell people all the time, like, I'm looking for guys who have a PhD in basketball, because if you can't process and think the game at a split-second rate in the NBA, like, you don't have a chance. Yeah. And then there are guys who are in the NBA, like Kyle Lowry, like Draymond Green, and you talk about the level of genius. Like, for Draymond to be able to sit at a podium and you, like, bring up an instance, and he can vividly tell you all of the happenings and the details, like, how special is that?
And we talk about, we're so used to them being like, oh, they're tall. Like, no. Like, that's not, that's, no. Draymond Green can remember, like, or these LeBron, I mean, every now and again, LeBron will show that he has this, like, ridiculous recall about. Like,
I would say most
left in some game in '96, and it's like, what the hell are you talking about? I don't even know where I lived in '96. Like,
my experience is most players have that to some degree.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary. Yeah, they can remember everything they did, and you can go back years and they will remember a lot of that play. Maybe not to LeBron's level, but yeah, Draymond does other things brilliantly too. He's super fast processor.
Well, there's I forget which book I have it in. Some book somewhere there's a thing about chess players, like master chess players. They would slap a chessboard just out around New York City, like a little picture of a chessboard with the chess pieces on it, like on a bus going by the cafe or whatever. And then they would be like, hey, well, where was the queen on that chessboard? And because this pattern is so baked into their recognition system, right? Like they can tell, oh, the queen was on, like, king 4 or whatever. And I think for basketball players who are processing like this, they've seen the court, right? Oh my gosh, Gerard, we have like 3 minutes left. Talking too much. Let's get Gerard.
I didn't realize it was so late.
Yeah, that's my bad. Talking about chess.
Gerard appreciates a good, smart player too. That's for sure.
He does.
Yeah. Brandon,
what's going on?
I am good, my man. I wanted to circle back on something you started earlier about. We know why the All-Star game is there and why it matters to the middle class. Because as these guys know, I'm in, fuck the man and fuck capitalism and all this sort of thing. Like, I'm just so curious how, like, you talk to players thinking about things like the NBPA, right? Because Henry and I talk about this all the time. Like, it matters in one sense, right, more to the middle class of the NBA. Like Chris Paul, LeBron, like Steph, like these guys, whatever, like they're fine. It doesn't ultimately matter what decisions get made. Their money is not getting screwed up in any tangible way. But everybody else, when these decisions are made, they're the ones who get screwed. And it's, people think, oh, but you make $1.5 million. Yeah, but if I support 10 people, $1.5 million ain't shit. Like, you know what I mean? So, like, when you talk to guys coming into the league, and as they've been there, how do they talk about the PA and like the roles of which class of players within the PA?
I think that a lot of the players don't take the vested interest in the role the PA plays. And because of that, they don't realize, what they're sacrificing and things like that till it's too late. And, we talked about certain players understanding power and their sway. They took over the boards of the NBPA in order to be able to, push things that greatly affected them.
See, folks, Brandon just wrapped up what I tell you every day on this show. a small minority of people get to make the rules for everybody else. Same thing happens in regular life. We got to cut this shit out.
Gerard, we're not arguing with you, my man. Like, you're our leader. We're listening.
Gerard showed up here with 3 minutes left and just he's spiking the football. Like,
Got to come in and drop bombs, you know.
You can't be angry when we're on your side.
He's got a bigger mission. All right, Brandon, David, Judy, we got to go. Thank you very much. Sorry we had to be fast.